Hello boys and girls, this is Mr. Kizik, and in this video we're going to be looking at point slope formula, slope intercept, and things of that nature in standard form too. So if you recall from back in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, point slope formula was utilized to help you get to your different formulas like standard form and slope intercept. So given a point, we'll say x1, y1, and a slope, the formula, the point slope formula, would be y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And then to do this, to solve for it, you would distribute the m here and then move the y1 over to the other side to get y by itself. So how do I do that, you ask? Well, we're going to look at a couple problems from each section, type 1, type 2, and then we're going to look at writing equations that are parallel or perpendicular to equations and lines that are given here, and then give you some homework problems. So for the first type, given a point and a slope. Well, what's nice about this one is that is exactly what the point slope formula is. Given a point and a slope, you just plug in your numbers into the correct spaces in the formula, and you solve for y equals. So for this here, remember the only values that are changing or being plugged into are y1, m, and x1. So in this case here, for 1, this is x1, y1, and then this is the slope. So plugging into the formula, we have y minus 1 equals 2 times the quantity x minus 4. And then you go about distributing and getting y by itself. So I have y minus 1 minus 1. Oh boy, I don't know why it's not working. There you go. Yep, still doesn't want to work here. Alright. Y minus 1 equals 2x minus 8. There you go. And then we would add the 1 to the other side, so we would have y equals 2x minus 7. And you're done. And that's how you do the rest of these problems here. Just gotta watch out for some negative signs. So like for example number 3, since it's a minus 6 here, it would actually, let's look at number 4, better example here. Since I have negative numbers, the minus sign in the formula doesn't replace those negative numbers. It's really y minus negative 1 equals negative 3/4 times x minus negative 8. And then the minus negative really just means it's positive. So y plus 1 equals negative 3/4 x plus 8. And then you would go about finishing the problem here. Okay. So that's type 1 given a point and a slope. Well, what happens if you're given 2 points instead? So in this case here, you have a point, but what you're missing is your slope. So all you have to do is, well, you got to utilize the slope formula first. So we got to do m equals. Now utilizing the slope formula, we would have negative 1 minus 7 over 1 minus negative 3. Whoa, okay. Negative 1 minus 7. Get back here, yeah, negative 1 minus 7 would be negative 8. 1 minus negative 3, which is really 1 plus 3, 4. So my slope here is negative 2. And now what's nice here is it doesn't matter which point you pick because both of them will satisfy your equation. Me personally, I'm going to pick the 1, negative 1. So my point slope formula would be y plus 1, because it's minus negative 1, equals negative 2 times the quantity x minus 1. Distribute y plus 1 equals negative 2x plus 2. And then subtract 1, so y equals negative 2x plus 1. And that is your answer. So again, when you're given 2 points, the first thing you have to do is find your slope first. And then pick whichever point you want to use, plug it into your point slope formula, and then solve for y. The next part here in your packet is writing equations that are parallel or perpendicular to another equation. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your equation that you're working with is in the form of y equals mx plus b. So let's actually look at one that requires you to do that first. So let's look at number 11. Well, in fact, let's look at number 9. Look at the basic problem first. So number 9 says, write an equation parallel to y equals 2x plus 4 that passes through the point -4, -1. So if you recall from the last section, lines are parallel if they have the same slope. So what that means is that I need to have, since it's parallel, I need to have the slopes to be the same. So what is the slope in this equation? It's going to be 2. And since it's parallel, that means I keep it the same. I have a slope. I have a point. I just use my point slope formula. So y plus 1, since it's y minus -1, equals 2 times the quantity x minus -4 or plus 4. Go about distributing y plus 1 equals 2x plus 8. Subtract 1, so y equals 2x plus 7. And there you go, you're done. If you remember from the last 2 years when you've done this positive 4 right here means nothing. Don't really care about that, don't utilize it for the math. So if I look at an example like number 11 here, it says write an equation that's parallel to x minus 3y equals 9 through a given point. Well, what makes this one different is that I need to solve for y equals first so I can identify the slope. So I could subtract x from both sides. I would get -3y equals -x plus 9. And then I get to divide by -3. So I'm going to have y equals, this is 1/3 x minus 3. Identify the slope, which is 1/3. And because the problem says parallel, that's the slope I'm going to use. I got a slope, I got a point. Now I just set up my problem. So y minus -1 or plus 1 equals 1/3 times x minus 3. Distribute y plus 1 equals 1/3 x minus 1. Add 1 to both sides. Subtract 1 to both sides, and I get y equals 1/3 x minus 2. Right. So that's how you work with parallel. With perpendicular, it is the same concept. You're still going to have to get in the form of y equals mx plus b. You're still going to have to identify a slope. But once you identify the slope, you got to take the opposite reciprocal because it says perpendicular. So if I look at number 12, write an equation that's perpendicular to y equals 3/4 x minus 1. Well, what is the slope here? The slope is 3/4. But because it says perpendicular, I need to take the opposite reciprocal of that. So what is the opposite reciprocal of 3/4? It's -4/3. Remember, flip the fraction, change the sign. So this is the slope I'm going to use along with that point. So y minus -3, which is plus 3, equals -4/3. And the pen's not working again. There you go. Times the quantity x minus 3. There. And then we go about distributing here. So y plus 3 equals -4/3 x plus 4. And then I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So y equals -4/3 x plus 1. And I do the same thing if the equation is not solved for y. So if I look at number 14 here, I would have to get y by itself. So it looks like I'm going to have to subtract 5x from both sides. So I'm going to get 3y equals -5x minus 21. And then I'm going to divide by 3. So I'm going to get y equals -5/3 x minus 7. Identify the slope, which is -5/3. I want it to be perpendicular, so I take the opposite reciprocal, and I get 3/5. So 3/5 is the slope I'm going to use, along with the point -5, 1 for my point slope formula. So I'm going to have y minus 1 equals 3/5 times the quantity x minus -5 or plus 5. Then I'm going to distribute. Y minus 1 equals 3/5 x plus 3. Add 1 to both sides. And I get this as my final answer. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you write equations given a point and a slope or 2 points, and how to write equations that are parallel or perpendicular to another equation. So for your homework, what I would like you to do is, let's see here. I would like you to do the odd problems for homework, okay? So complete the odd problems for homework, and then we'll go over it next class. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to email me. This is Mr. Kizik, signing off.